It illustrates the conjecture about how basic intellectual ability and psychological maturity related to impulsivity, risk perception, sensation seeking, future orientation, etc., evolve over the life cycle. He argues that intellectual ability matures more rapidly than psychological or psychosocial maturity. In this model, increase in adolescent risk taking are due to restructuring of the brain's dopaminergic system in such a way that immediate or novel experiences yield higher rewards, especially in the presence of peers. He attributes declines in risk taking to the development of the brain's cognitive control system, specifically improvements in the prefrontal cortex that promote aspects of executive function such as response inhibition, planning ahead, weighing risks and the rewards, and the simultaneous consideration of multiple information sources. Interestingly, even in his model, sensation seeking partially depends on the presence of peers, which corresponds to aspect of the situation in the framework of section 3. The example lights in difficulty in disentangling situational and biological changes in particular. Next, personal influences, how it influences by way of physical and psychological makeup and desires affect what we do and how we act, and explain why we act the way we act as a work. So, what are the personal influence or personal influence? What are all the categories? Many of us tend to think of decision making as a process in which two separate and opposite mechanisms are engaged in a critical struggle, with the emotional and impulsive mechanism within us tempting us to choose the wrong thing, while the rational and intellectual mechanism that we also carry inside us slowly and ploddingly promises to lead us eventually to make the right choice. This description, which was also shared by many scientists until several decades ago, is both simplistic and wrong. Our emotional and intellectual mechanisms work together and sustain each other. Sometimes they cannot be separated at all. In many cases, a decision based on emotion or intuition may be much more efficient and indeed better than a decision arrived at after thorough and rigorous analysis of all the possible outcomes and implications. A study conducted at the University of California at Santa Barbara several decades ago indicates that in situations in which we are moderately angry, our ability to distinguish between relevant and irrelevant claims in distributed is sharpened. Another study that I co-authorized reveals that our indication is becoming engaged grows in situations in which we can benefit from stranger. In other words, there is logic in emotion and often emotion in logic. Social transactions such as our emotions, anger, empathy, envy, and shame shape strategic interactions, as they not only influence the behavior of those who experience them but also of those who interact with them. This is the reason why even negative emotions can result in a desirable, comical, or economic behavior. A vengeful attitude can be introduced introduce cooperation than self-interest and perfect rational attitude, even when emotional reaction are detrimental to our. Even negative emotions can result in a desirable economic behavior. A vengeful attitude can induce cooperation more than self-interested and perfect rational attitude, even when emotional reactions are detrimental to our economic behavior, and they almost always emerge for a reason. Very often the reason is six eventually and can gus as guidelines. They almost always emerge for a reason. Very often the reason is evolutionary and can offer us guidelines regarding effective remedies. The new insights that have been obtained about the role of emotions are an outcome of a quite revolution that has occurred over the past 2 decades in 3 important research disciplines: brain sciences, behavioral economics, and game theory. These 3 together have in recent years expanded our understanding of all aspects related to human behavior. If in the past emotions were studied mainly in psychology, sociology, and economics and game theory, these 3 together have in recent years expanded our understanding of all aspects related to human behavior. If in the past emotions were studied mainly in psychology, sociology, and philosophy, while rationality was the preserve of economics and game theory, today both the study of rationality and the study of emotions are active research subjects for scholars in all those fields. Game theory and behavioral economics are rapidly expanding subjects within economics. Over the past 2 decades, 13 Nobel Prizes in economics were awarded to researchers in those 2 fields. Their influence is felt well beyond the gates of academia. For example, R. Sunstein was the administrator of White House Office of Information and Regulatory Affairs in US President Barack Obama's administration. His colleague Richard H. Thaler helped to build the behavioral insight team set up by the British Prime Minister David Cameron in his cabinet office to serve as an in-house consulting board using behavioral tools. However, behavioral economics focuses primarily on the limitations of our cognitive mind, leaving our emotional mind largely out of the picture. It seeks remedies to biases without determining or even hypothesizing first where these biases are coming from. Many of the biases that most of us believe are driven by limited cognitive ability or in fact driven by emotions. Here are the examples. Herding behavior is often believed to be a result of cognitive laziness. Instead of figuring out the right thing to do, we choose the simpler option of following the crowd. This is a wrong explanation for this bias. We often follow the crowd because we fear regret. Taking a wrong decision hurts less when everyone else was wrong. After all, sorrow loves company. The second example concerns the reluctance to sell assets trading at loss. Most economists attribute this phenomenon to false beliefs in mean conversation or mean reversion, but regret seems to be the main drive here as well. The mental cost of admitting to have made a wrong financial decision can be enormous, but such a decision is stamped as wrong only when the losing asset has been sold. So long as it is held, the decision to buy might turn out to be a great decision. Ill economy behavior requires diagnosis before remedies are prescribed. Shooting in the dark for nudges cannot be an effective strategy to improve economic behavior. Theoretical and empirical research that puts in the forefront the question of why people behave the way they do is urgently needed if the amazing achievements that behavioral economics has already accomplished are to grow further. So, as far as personality influence is concerned, so there are other factors which is really part of the influential thing. It can be the age, the gender, the abilities and motivations, perception, personality, attitude, as well as the moods. And A simplified comparison of how age influences the work behavior. So, when you compare the ages of two different categories, one is the young individuals and the other one less younger individuals. So, here as far as young individuals is concerned, they are less experienced and others are highly experienced, and young individuals have new skills and knowledge, while the other category have some obsolete skills and knowledge. Whereas the young individuals seek to disrupt the status quo, the other category seek to preserve the status quo. In the case of young individual, they seek to embrace new work technologies, whereas the seniors seek to embrace routine work systems, and young individuals rely on the experience of the old, while the experience rely on the novelty of the young. So that is how the simplified comparison of age influencing the work behavior can be seen.